So a pleasant day to everyone. So here we are again. So we are now discussing the anatomy of nervous system. But before that, I presume that you have already watched the video that I have sent in our group, which is entitled Twins and Personality. So in that video, we can clearly say that the environment itself clearly has an impact to what would be the behavior or the quality of the traits would be in a specific person. So, kung pinakinggan yung mabuti, makikita nyo dun, meron dong tinatawag nilang virtual twins, wherein hindi sila biological twins, pero pinalaki sila na twins sila. No? So, makikita na meron silang similarities kahit pinaghiwalay silang landas, no, when they grow up. But, mapapatunayan nito at talagang ma-emphasize dito na yung nurture, no? Nurturing environment would greatly affect yung behavior nila in the future, no? Hindi lang yung predisposed sa kanila na nature, no, or galing sa mga magulang nila. Dahil kahit sila ay exposed or napunta sa other situations where they are not together, makikita pa rin yung similarity sa kanila dahil yun yung kinalakihan nila. So now, we will be starting our next lesson, which is the anatomy of the nervous system. So, this is a very complicated topic. Pero hindi naman siya sobrang hirap. It's much more of very technical and very scientific in a way that sobrang daming terms na kailangan nating aralin. And don't worry dahil hindi ko naman na-i-include lahat. So, this presentation comprises of almost 85 slides or 86 I think to 89. Pero hindi ko siya lahat i-discuss. Yung iba ay dadaan lang natin dahil hindi natin kakailanganin. So, we should be discussing on the more important things. Pero I think I should still be presenting it to you. So, makikita nyo pa rin in the course of our discussion for this chapter, the anatomy of the nervous system. So, let's start. No, I hope that you also had your ball pens and notebooks already, ha? So, let's begin. So, this is a brain again. No? Since our subject is biopsychology, so pag-uusapan ulit natin yung brain. Pero we will be talking more on its structure, no? The anatomy of the brain itself, or the nervous system rather. So, ano nga ba yung pino-comprise, no, ng brain? Ano yung functions ng parts niya? So, pag-uusapan natin sila. Yung iba dito, familiar na kayo. Yung iba ay ngayon po lang mamimit. Pero, if you would ask me to, no? So, I would not be knowledgeable with the terms that I will be discussing later if I have not studied them. So, kaya ipepresent namin sa inyo, no? We cannot teach naman what we haven't learned. So, inaral namin to, so we can discuss it to you. And I think naman na makukuha nyo yung learnings na inaral din namin, no? So, let's start. So, prepare to be mind blown because of the technical terms. Pero, diretso muna tayo. Organization of the nervous system. So, pwede nyo itong screenshot dahil kapag nakuha nyo itong organization of the nervous system, no, madali nyo nung maiintindihan yung mga other parts. Bakit? Ito yung mga general parts, no, ng ating nervous system and including din dito yung kanilang mga subparts. So, if you can see, under the nervous system, we have the central nervous system, no? Basta sinabi nating central nervous system or CNS, already ang pinapertain natin dito is the brain or the spinal cord. Wala nang iba. So, but when we are talking about peripheral nervous system, no, it branches out to many different subparts, no? So, let's continue. So, in order to understand what the brain does, it is first necessary to understand what it is, no, to know the names and location of its major parts and how they are connected to one another. So, this chapter introduces you to these fundamentals of the brain anatomy. Let's go. So first, we have the central nervous system. So nabanggit ko na to kanina. It's located with the skull and within the skull and the spine. So we have the brain and the spinal cord. So continuing, we have the peripheral nervous system. So this part gets a little bit tricky. So I think familiar na kayo dito. Narinig nyo na rin to dati pero medyo nakakalimutan lang natin yung functions nila. So when we say peripheral nervous system, no, it's outside the skull and the spine. So ano ba tong mga to? So, we have two under it, which is the somatic nervous system and the autonomic nervous system. kapag sinabi nating somatic, it interacts with the external environment, no? So, from the external environment, sensory, papunta sa brain. So, first, we have the afferent nerves, no? Carry sensory signals from the skin, skeletal muscles, joints, eyes, ears to the CNS. Next, we have the efferent nerves naman, which carry signals from the brain or the CNS to the skeletal muscles and nerves. So, ito yung motor. So, ulitin ko, kapag somatic nervous system, it interacts with the external environment, no? It can be afferent nerves, no? From our senses to the brain, to the CNS rather, no? Or it can be an efferent nerves from the brain, no? Motor signals going to the skeletal muscles and the nerves. So, palabas naman siya. Okay, so we also have the autonomic nervous system under the peripheral, which regulates the body's internal environment. So, afferent nerves carry sensory signals from internal organs to the CNS. So, when we say autonomic, automatic, tandaan nyo lang yun. No, somatic is body. Autonomic nervous system regulates the body's internal environment. Ulitin ko lang. So, afferent nerves carry sensory signals from internal organs to the CNS. So, from other parts, no, yung mga major organs natin, pabalik sa ating CNS. While the efferent nerves naman, motor signals from the CNS to the internal organs. No? Again, motor signals from CNS to the internal organs. It can be an automatic motor signal. For example, yung beating of your heart, no? Yung digestion, no? Yung mga hindi naman natin kinokontrol manually. So, autonomic nervous system is under autonomic, no? So, we have here the sympathetic nerves, no? Para mas matandaan natin siya. So, it stimulate, organize, and mobilize energy resources in threatening situation. So, ito yung mas gumagana during fight and flight, no? So, changes in the autonomic nervous system which are initiated are indicative of psychological arousal. So, during fight and flight, no? Sympathetic nerves yung gumagana under autonomic nervous system. No? Yung tumataas yung adrenaline nyo, kapag may tinatakbuhan kayong aso, syempre flight yun, no? Parang mas lumalakas yung or bumibilis yung takbo ninyo, no? Parang naging ninja. It's because of the autonomic nervous system signaling the spleen to produce more adrenaline. Let's push. So we also have here the parasympathetic nerves. It projects from brain and sacral or lower back region to the of the spinal cord rather. So it acts to conserve energy. Kapag sinabi natin autonomic, tandaan na yung word na automatic, no? So it changes initiated are indicative of psychological relaxation. So which includes the following: digestion, no? Defecation, rest, and excretion. Kapag digestion, sisimulan natin sa peristalsis or yung pag di ba, syempre manual pa yung pagnguya ng food. Pero kapag nilunok nyo from the esophagus, hindi nyo na kinokontrol yan, no? Magkakaroon ng tinatawag na peristalsis, no, which is involuntary para maibaba nyo yung ninuya, yung pagkain papunta sa stomach, no? So, also, the digestion, kapag dinadigest mo food, hindi nyo naman siya manual na gigiling sa tiyan nyo. Yung digestive juices ng bahala nun and digestive muscles. Also, the defecation, once na-start nyo na mag-poop, no? Dire-diretso na yan. Hindi nyo siya pwedeng tigilin or ang hirap pigilin, no? Baka may stress ka lang kapag subukan mong tigilin yung pag-defecate mo. Di ba, natatry nyo pa nga minsan yung patalastas ng lomotil. Aabot ka ba o maabutan ka ba? Mahirap ikaw maabutan kasi ang hirap pigilin ng defecation. So, we also have the rest, which is also an autonomic nervous system function. No? Sleeping, ayan. The excretion, no? Yung excretion naman natin ay hindi naman natin kinokontrol. What do we mean when we say excretion? It is the releasing of excess waste from our body, such as sweat, no? It is also released when we tend to cool down our body kapag medyo mainit, no? Tulad ngayon, pinagpapawisan ako, kaiba, no? I hope na relax naman kayo sa position ninyo. So, let's continue. And other types of fluids that we excrete, no? They are under autonomic nervous system. Next, we have what we call the meninges. So, it's meninges. So, ano ba itong meninges? So, hindi na to makikita dun sa organizational chart or major division ng nervous system. So, the brain and the spinal cord are the most protected parts of our body. So, they are encased in a bone covered by 3 protective membranes or the meninges. So, pagkatapos ng bones, they are protected by what we call the meninges. So, meninges is plural form. So, ang kanyang singular form is meninx. So, ang pinaka-outer layer is called dura mater. So it's a Latin term which means tough mother. So inside the dura mater is a fine spider web-like membrane called arachnoid membrane. So tatlo lang yung meninges ha. Dura mater, next is the arachnoid membrane. So web-like membrane yun. So beneath arachnoid membrane, we have what we call the subarachnoid space. So hindi ito meninges, no? Pero parang space lang siya na nag-act as cushion at saka nag-fill in sa mga other parts na kailangang dumaan sa brain, such as the blood vessels and the cerebrospinal fluid, no? Then we have the last or the inner meninges, which is called the delicate pia mater, which means pious mother in Latin. So ulitin natin. So meninges is the plural form, meninges is singular. So the first part or the outermost part, which is the toughest, it's the dura mater. The next is the arachnoid membrane, spider web-like membrane. The next is the pia mater, which is a delicate pia mater. Pero between pia mater and arachnoid membrane, we have subarachnoid space, which contains blood vessels, cerebrospinal fluid, and cerebrospinal fluid rather. So yung pia mater, siya na yung directly naka-adhere sa surface ng CNS or sa brain mismo, no? So, itong meninges, hindi lang ito matatagpuan sa loob ng skull, ha? Even sa loob ng vertebrae, no? Vertebrates. So, dun sa inyong backbone, no? May bone yan, di ba? Sa loob ng bone na yon, no? Bago mag-spinal cord, no? Sa spinal column, meron munang meninges din. So, which includes dura mater, arachnoid membrane, and and pia mater, rather. Sorry. So, next, we have the cerebrospinal fluid. So, nabanggit na natin kanina. So, we are a little bit familiar with cerebrospinal fluid, right? So, yung iba siguro, narinig na siya dati and nababanggit siya sa science and biology. If you have biology, no? Cerebrospinal fluid or CSF in short. So, what is cerebrospinal fluid and ano ba ang purpose niyan? So, it fills the subarachnoid space, the central canal of the spinal cord, and the cerebral ventricles of the brain. So, bakit niya kailangan i-fill? So, ang purpose nito is to support and cushion the brain. So, kung tingnan natin dito sa pinakababa, the fluid supports and cushions the brain. Para saan? During impact, so it also acts as a shock absorber, no? Though, kung tingnan natin, ito ba sir, hindi ba pag hinawakan namin yung ulo ngayon, malapit na kami sa brain? Yes, but there is the cerebral spinal fluid din, no? So, ito yung fluid na umiikot, no? Na minsan reason din kaya kayo nahihilo kapag umiikot-ikot kayo, no? Kasi kapag umiikot-ikot kayo, natry nyo naman mga bata pa kayo, or even yung malaki na, try nyo umikot-ikot, no? Yung cerebrospinal fluid, hindi pa siya tapos mag-circulate, which causes dizziness, no? Naiiwan siya na nag-circulate sa inyong head. So, let's continue. So, CSF is produced by the part called choroid plexus, no? Or choroid plexuses, kasi plural. So, it's a network of capillaries that protrude into ventricles from pia mater. So, from pia mater, no? Yung pious mother, yung pinaka-delicate part. So, pinuproduce doon yung CSF or cerebrospinal fluid. So, let's continue. So, disregard yun na yung mga ibang parts kasi medyo hindi ko na yan idadagdag pa. So, ayan. So, we have here some passages of the cerebrospinal fluid. We have here the ventricular system of the brain. So, ito nakikita ninyo, itong ventricles, dinadaanan niya ng cerebral fluid, cerebrospinal fluid rather, and cerebral aqueducts, no? Ayan, itong cerebral aqueducts, yan, dinadaanan niya ng CSF, no? Let's continue. So, there are instances na yung cerebrospinal fluid natin ay nabablock, no? Anong mangyayari kapag na-block yung flow ng ating CSF? So, pwede tayo magka-problem. So, ano ba yung nang bablock usually sa cerebrospinal fluid? Usually, it can be caused by a concussion or a damage in the brain, or it can be caused or due to a tumor near one of the channels. Yung supposedly dinadaanan ng CSF ay nabablock dahil sa tumor. And magkakaroon tayo ng problem, kailangan tanggalin yun, no? Kapag nag-build up yung fluid dun sa ventricles nyo, magkikreate yun ng pressure sa walls ng ventricles ng brain, no? Ventricles are small capillaries and brains in the brain rather. So kapag nag-build up yan, napupuno, imagine nyo lang yung balloon, no? So yung balloon, meron siyang specific capacity na kaya niyang i-contain. So kapag tuloy-tuloy nyo nilagyan nyo ng tubig from the faucet or from a hose, no? Tuloy-tuloy yan, marireach na yung kanyang specific point na magbo-burst siya. So, ganun yung nangyayari sa head ng mayroong condition na tinatawag na hydrocephalus, no? Kapag may blockage, no, yung kanilang ventricles, need na tanggalin yun because magpuproduce ng CSF, no? In children with the enlargement of head, no? Magpuproduce yan, lalaki yung head ng bata dahil mapupuno ng CSF. So, paano yun matitreat? By draining the excess fluid and trying to remove the obstruction or tumor or blood clot, etc. So, nakakatakot yan and napakahirap, no? Ayan. Also, we have here what we call the blood-brain barrier. So, this is a very important part of our nervous system because it protects the brain itself, no? So, meron na nga tayong meninges, meron pa tayong tinatawag na blood-brain barrier. So, ano naman ang purpose ng blood-brain barrier? So, blood-brain barrier is a mechanism that impedes or stops the passage of toxic substance from the blood into the brain. So, yes, kailangan ng brain ang blood because yun ang magsusupply sa oxygen at saka sa nutrients, pero hindi lahat ng daladala ng blood ay pinapapasok ng brain. Napipigilan yun ng blood-brain barrier. Kasi kapag lahat ng chemicals na kinakain mo or ini-ingest mo rather ay pumasok sa brain, mas mapapadali ang buhay mo. So, it is a special structure of cerebral blood vessels. The cells of the blood vessels walls are tightly packed, so nothing can pass even in between. No? Na sobrang siksik ng mga blood vessels, dikit-dikit sila para hindi basta-basta makapasok yung mga chemicals. No? Pero ang nangyayari, it keeps out useful as well as harmful chemicals. So, yung mga supposedly makakatulong, pati yung mga harmful, hindi nakakapasok. Pero, there is what we call the chemical permeability. Again, chemical permeability. May mga specific types of chemicals, nutrients, or minerals na kayang-kayang pumasok sa brain through different means, no? Or kaya nilang pumasok, parang passes nila yon sa blood-brain. So, kaya yung mga inisip nyo, paano sir yung vitamins? Hindi nakaka-receive ng vitamins sa brain. Nakaka-receive. Pero merong mechanism din kung paano sila nakapasok. Meron silang tinatawag na passes. So, a special mechanism to get those useful chemicals are small uncharged molecules of O2 and CO2. So, itong mga uncharged molecules na to, they can cross freely. So, also water. Water crosses through a special protein channel. Siyempre, kailangan ng water. So, molecules that dissolve in the fats are of membranes also cross passively. So, take note yung mga following. So, itong mga sumusunod, they can cross passively or nakapasok sila unnoticed, no? Dire-diretso sila, hindi sila nakaharang ng blood-brain barrier. First is vitamin A and vitamin D. Also some types of vitamins, no? Next is alcohol, no? Nakaka-penetrate ang alcohol, no? Nakakalagpas siya. Bakit? Usually kasi tinitreat ito ng brain as fluid, no? Para i-supply sa mga cells. Ang nangyayari, kahit meron tayong kasabihan na huwag ilagay ang alak sa utak, wala kayong choice. Kapag uminom kayo, dadaan sa utak ninyo, no? If you could remember my previous discussion, kapag dumiretso yan sa inyong brain, uubusin yan yung specific type of vitamin B, no? Kasi yung alcohol ay may thiamylase. It is an enzyme that breaks down thiamine, no? Which can cause you to be groggy, no? Medyo maapektuhan yung sense ng balance ninyo, no? Decision making, yes, oo, may factor, pero do not blame it on the alcohol, blame it to yourself. And also, ayun, mas madali kayong mag-shutdown kasi kailangan ng katawan nyo na i-replenish yung lost vitamin B. No? Kaya ang tendency, aantukin kayo and kusang magre-replenish yung katawan ninyo. No? Or you need to pee, kailangan nyo iihi. No? May times na kailangan nyo isuka kasi i-reject ng body ninyo. No? Kasi yung body nyo yung nagre-react sa alak. We also have the anesthetics or anesthesia. It can penetrate, no, in the brain. And the antidepressants, no, which goes directly to the brain, no? It helps in the control of the neurotransmitters. Yan. So again, these types of chemicals, and meron pa akong mababanggatin later, they have what we call the chemical permeability. They can permeate, no, or they can penetrate the blood-brain barrier. Penetrative. So also, ito pa yung other mechanism. So, other mechanisms to get useful chemicals go in the brain is called active transport. Active transport yung tawag para makapasok yung mga some other types of chemical na necessary naman para maging healthy ang brain, no? Active transport is a protein-mediated process, no? So with the aid of protein, it that needs energy to pump chemicals into the brain. So parang tinutulak niya para makapasok, no? Kahit merong safe bubble, no, or meron tayong blood-brain barrier, meron tayong tinatawag na active transport na pwede niyang i-push itong mga nutrients papasok. What are those chemicals or nutrients that can go through with the aid of active transport? We have here the glucose, no? So kailangan ng brain ng glucose because glucose is the main fuel din ng brain, no? Kaya minsan kapag medyo nahihilo kayo or nagbibiyahe kayo, ito yung nag-explain kung bakit minsan binibigyan kayo ng menthol or binibigyan kayo ng matamis, no? Glucose is the main fuel for the brain, no? Para malabanan niyo yung nausea, para malabanan niyo yung dizziness. So we also have the amino acids, is the building blocks of protein. So kailangan to ng brain kapag nagre-regenerate. We have the choline, which is a growth factor. We have vitamins, yung other vitamins, the iron with the blood, and the hormones itself. So these are the chemicals that get... Ayan, cells of the nervous system. So hindi ko na ito masyadong i-emphasize ng sobra yung mga iba dito kasi alam ko familiar naman na kayo. And yung iba i-skip na lang natin pero ipapakita ko pa rin sa inyo para may idea lang kayo. You can go back here and I will also send this PowerPoint naman, don't worry. So we have here the support cells, neuroglia, no? Oh, yeah, astrocytes, no? It looks like a star, abundant star-shaped cells. So these are some of the cells of the brain. We have here the microglia, spider-like phagocytes. So sila yung tagatapon ng mga waste material sa brain. Ependymal cells, sila yung nag-circulate sa cerebrospinal fluid. Makita nyo may mga hair dyan. Sila ang reason kaya nagpo-flow yung CSF. We have the oligodendrocytes, sila ang nagpo-produce ng myelin sheath, no? Oligodendrocytes, ayan. And satellite cells, pinoprotection na niya yung neuron cell bodies. Schwann cells, no? Also forms myelin sheath in the peripheral nervous system. Ayan. So, ayan, given naman yan eh. Kapag sinabi natin what do you call the cells of the brain? Siyempre, automatic ang sagot ay neuron. So, tama naman. So, these are cells that is specialized to transmit messages. Pero yung very familiar tayong type ng neuron ay hindi pala natin pa siya na-discuss. Ipapakita ko siya later on pero hindi ko na siya masyadong bibigyan ng attention. So, physically lang naman yan, and function. So, this is the normal neuron that we can see, no? Ito yung normal neuron na nakikita natin. So, let's continue. We have here its specific parts and sa mga susunod na slides naman ay in-include ko pa rin to. So, makita nyo yung mga familiar kayong parts, mitochondria, no, etc., etc. And we have here the cell body of a multipolar neuron. So, makikita nyo yan, no? Cytoplasm, yung mitochondria nga pala, kahit nakapikit, kaya nyo sabihin kung ano ang function yun. So, ayun mga parts. Let's continue. So, in the cell body itself, ito yung nagko-contain sa DNA or deoxyribonucleic acid, no? So, ito yung nagkikare ng genes ninyo, no? Ayan. Let's proceed. The cell body has the cytoplasm. So, makikita nyo dito, ito yung cytoplasm. Dito lumulutang yung mga parts, no? It is the clear internal fluid of a cell. So, ayan. Ribosome, site of protein synthesis. So, let's continue. Cell body, ayan na. Hindi ko na masyadong bibigyan ng emphasis. Check nyo na lang. No? You can post the video or read the PowerPoint. Let's continue. Ayan. Extension outside the cells, we have the dendrites and the axons. So, main part of the neuron yan. Dendrite receives messages, no? Or electrical impulses, while the axon it conducts impulses away from the cell body. So again, dendrites conduct impulses toward, papasok, no? Papunta rather, and axons conduct impulses away from the cell body to another neuron. So the structure of the axon, we have here the myelin sheath. Nakita niyo, it's an insulating material. So we have here is the nodes of Ranvier. So interruptions in the myelin sheath, no? Sa nodes of Ranvier, doon yung part na parang binuboost nila yung electric impulses para mas mabilis yung dalon, no? Presynaptic terminal axon button or axon terminal button is the point from which the axon releases chemicals that crosses the junction between neuron. So, itong axon terminal, nakikita nyo dyan sa pinakababa, connected dyan sa dendrite ng another neuron. Types of neurons and axons. Yan, we have here afferent, interneuron, intrinsic neuron. Hindi ko ito masyadong i-discuss, no? So, you can read it na lang. Hindi ko naman siya include na sa exams. We also have here the classes of neurons, no? Ito yung usual nakikita ninyo na picture ng neuron. It's a multipolar neuron. A neuron with more than 2 processes extending from its cell body. So, it can have more than 2 processes. So, it can receive and it could send off electrical signals at the same time, no? At marami siyang dendrites. So, a neuron with one process, no? Sending from cell body, it's called unipolar neuron. Kunyari, ang process ng neuron nito ay mag-send up lang ng neurotransmitter para magalit ka. Unipolar neuron lang yan. Kapag bipolar, it has at least 2, no? Basta multipolar, marami. Kapag interneuron naman, no? It has short axon, no? Or no axon. Wala na siyang dadaanan, diretso send ng signal, no? Ayan. So, ito yung mga itsura. The unipolar neuron, the bipolar neuron, the multipolar neuron, or yung common na nakikita nating neuron, and the multipolar interneuron, or yung wala ng axon at all. So, direction of the vertebrate nervous system. So, tapos na tayo dun sa cells or sa neuron. So, medyo in-skip natin. Madami pa rin terms, pero dinire-diretso na rin natin. You can go back na lang. I will include some of them, pero hindi lahat. No? Yung mga hindi ko masyadong pinagtuunan ng pansin, hindi ko na siya include. Kaya don't worry. So, directions of the vertebrate nervous system. So, bakit natin ito pag-aaralan? Kasi, kapag kayo ay magpupursue ng medical field, ito usually yung pinapertain natin specific parts ng ating nervous system. We have 3 axes kapag sa vertebrate. So, we have the anterior, posterior, dorsal, ventral, and medial, lateral. So, anterior is toward the nose. We have posterior towards the tail. We have the dorsal towards the surface or of the back or the top of the head. And we have the ventral toward the surface of the chest or at the bottom of the head. So, ulitin natin. Anterior toward the nose, no? So, gitna toward the nose, posterior toward the tail, no? Papunta sa tail or dun sa puwetan kapag sa tao yan or animal. So, dorsal toward the surface of the back or the top of the head, no? Sa likod natin yan, no? Yung sa dolphin, yung may dorsal fin, yung fin sa likod nila. The ventral toward the surface of the chest or the bottom of the head. And medial toward the midline of the body. So, may picture naman na kayong akong ipipresent para mas maintindihan ninyo. We also have the lateral or away from the mid. Here it is. So, the medial, lateral, dorsal, anterior, and ventral. Posterior positions. So, ayan. Ito yung mga positions. Para matandaan ninyo. So, next. Direction naman in humans. So, we are vertebrate, pero mas specific kasi kapag humans. No? So, we have the superior, the top of the primate head. No? We have the inferior, the bottom of the primate head. We have the proximal. No? We have the distal. No? Proximal is close to CNS and distal is far from. So, ito naman yung kapag sa tao. So, we have here the anterior, dorsal, posterior, ventral, no? Medial, and lateral. So, ayan. So, let's continue. We also have the planes and sections in the human nervous system. So, ano naman to, sir? So, ang dami namang direction. Sobrang dami, di ba? Napaka-technical. So, itong planes and sections in the human nervous system, ito yung usually ginagamit ng mga rad tech or technician kapag pinapertain yung specific location ng problem sa head or sa injury sa brain. So, ito siya. So, we have the sagittal plane, no? Which is the left and the right part of the brain. The horizontal plane, yung top at saka yung bottom part. We have the frontal, yung front part and back part ng brain. And we have the cross-sectional, no? Of the spinal cord. So, since nabanggit ko na yung spinal cord, we go there. So, extend from the medulla oblongata, no? Or yung lower part ng brain natin, the region of T12. The region of T12 is the part just above your sphincter or yung sa puwetan ninyo, no? Below the T12 is the cauda equina. So, cauda equina is collection of the spinal nerves. So, kung hindi kayo familiar sa T12, ito yung dun sa yung kung itatouch nyo yung upper part before magbutas ng puwet, no? Makikita dyan yung tip na parang may bukol. So, yun yung pinakadulo ng spinal cord ninyo. Tawag doon is cauda equina. So, enlargements occur in the cervical and lumbar regions. So, ito yung tsura ng spinal cord. So, familiar naman na kayo dyan. So, spinal cord's content or parts, no, exterior white matter. So, it's the part where the conduction, which conducts the tracts, no? So, ayun, kung makikita nyo, andito pa rin yung meninges. Meron dito yung dura mater, arachnoid membrane, and the pia mater. So, also, we have what we call the internal gray matter, same to the brain, which is mostly cell bodies. Ito yung mga neurons na nagsiksikan. Andyan sila. Kaya kapag sinabi nating neurons, huwag niyong iisipin na ang neurons nyo ay located lang sa brain, no? Meron din kayong neurons sa inyong spinal cord, no? So, may gray matter din yan. So, central canal is filled with cerebrospinal fluid. So, meron pa rin tayong meninges that covers the spinal cord. So, nerves live at the level of each vertebrae. So, from the root, no? Meron tayo dyang sensory afferent nerves din. So, we can skip that na naman. So, now let's go to the 5 major divisions of the brain. So, familiar pa ba kayo sa major divisions of the brain? Natatandaan niyo po ba yung divisions of the brain? Sige nga, I will post this. Ayan. So, sure ba kayo na yun yung major divisions of the brain? Are you sure? So, ito na. So, we have the forebrain. So, tama ba yung sagot niyo? So, we have here the forebrain, which includes the telencephalon and diencephalon. So, tandaan nyo itong mga major divisions ng brain. Under the forebrain, we have the telencephalon and diencephalon. So, ibabanggitin natin later on kung ano yung mga content ng mga yan. No? Next, we have the midbrain. The midbrain contains the mesencephalon. And we have the hindbrain, which has the metencephalon and the myelencephalon. Ulitin natin. Forebrain, telencephalon, diencephalon. Next, we have the mesencephalon. Next, we have the metencephalon and the myelencephalon. So, yan yung 5 major divisions. Itong telen, dien, mesen, meten, at saka myelin. Yan yung 5 major divisions ng ating brain. So, ano yan, sir? Puro cephalon. Cephalic kasi, it pertains to the head or sa brain, no? So, mamaya pag-usapan natin kung ano yung mga specific parts na under dyan sa mga yan. Okay, so ito yung parts para makita ninyo yung makita niyo kung saan siya makita sa brain. Forebrain, no? Ito yung mas nakikita natin sa labas. Diencephalon, the inner, midbrain, mesencephalon, the hindbrain, and the myelencephalon. Now, we will go to the cerebral hemisphere, no? So, ito yung pinakamalaking part. So, makita natin dito yung cerebrum. So, the cerebrum itself is paired as left and right part. So, kapag tingnan natin, di ba parang may hati yung brain natin? Even sa anatomy natin. So, I cannot show you kasi pero familiar naman na kayo sa brain structure itself. Makikita nyo naman na parang kung tingnan siya, nahati siya sa dalawa. So, let's continue. It includes more than half of the brain mass, no? More than half. So, kung tatanungin natin kung ano yung heaviest part, no? We can clearly say that it's the cerebrum. Or cerebrum, rather. Next, the surface is made of ridges and grooves called the gyrus or gyri and sulcus or sulci. Ayan. So, yung mga ridges dito, ito yung mga part na parang bukol-bukol sa brain, no? And yung grooves, yun yung pagitan. Yun yung parang mga fissures, no? So, wag kayong malito dun, ha? Ang ridges, ang tawag sa kanila ay gyri or gyrus, no? Gyri kapag singular, gyrus kapag plural. Ridges, ito yung mga bukol-bukol, no? And yung grooves naman, or sulci, sulcus kapag plural, ito yung fissures, no? Ito yung medyo mas malalalim na part, no? So, ayan, makikita niyo dito. Okay, so kung tignan yung lower part, ng ating image, gyrus, no, or gyri, ito yung bukol-bukol, and yung sulcus, no, ito yung mga grooves, no, or ayun yung malalalim. Okay? Lobes of the cerebrum. So, familiar naman guys sa mga lobes. So, ano yung mga lobes ng cerebrum? So, ang nagde-divide, kaya nila na-identify yung mga different lobes is the fissures or deep grooves. So, ano ulit yung mga grooves or deep fissures? They are the sulcus that divide the cerebrum into lobes. So, syempre, familiar na kayo dito. Can you still identify? So, kung saan yung specific part yung frontal lobe, yung parietal lobe, occipital lobe, and temporal lobe. So, as of this moment, can you touch your frontal lobe, your parietal lobe, your occipital lobe, and your temporal lobe? So, tama ba yung mga tinouch yung part? So, we have the specialized area of the cerebrum. So, here we have the somatic sensory area. It receives impulses from the body's sensory receptors. We have the sensory association cortex, no? Andito yung association. Somatic sensory area are the main areas that receive impulse. Yung sensory association, sila yung mga channels or nagpapasa-pasa nitong mga sensory or senses na nakukuha nyo outside. So, let's continue. We have the primary motor area. So, syempre, motor. So, may malaking factor ng motor area ng brain because it sends impulses to the skeletal muscle so we can move, no? So, tuloy-tuloy natin yan. The Broca's area, no? So, kung natatandaan nyo, Wernicke's area is for language, Broca's area naman is for the speech or the ability to speech. So, let's continue. So, ano itong pinapakita ko sa inyo? Are you familiar with this? Ano ba yun, sir? Ang weird, no? So, this image is called homunculus or homunculi. So, what does homunculus means? So, homunculus means little man in Latin. So, but in neuroanatomy, so the cortical homunculus represents either the motor or the sensory distribution along the cerebral cortex of the brain, no? So, while the sensory homunculus is a topographic representation of the body parts along the postcentral gyrus of the parietal lobe. So, ano ibig sabihin nito? Ba't ko ito pinapakita? So, if our function would be interpreted by the size, no? Which is in compared to the activity in the brain, so ganito supposedly ang makikita natin. What does it mean? So, marami kasi tayong motor neuron and yung kamay natin, no? Napakarami nitong parang fine movements, no? So, malaking part ng brain natin ang kumokontrol dito, kaya enlarge yan. Even sa mouth, no? It has many functions. You're familiar naman, no? Your mouth has many functions such as salivation, speaking, talking. So, yan yung mga parts ng brain na nagre-represent na medyo marami-rami yung part ng brain ko na nagko-function kapag ito yung ginagamit ko. So, para mas maintindihan, the sensory motor areas of the cerebral cortex. Sorry, nag-green. Ayan, if we would be looking here on the sensory and motor areas of the cerebral cortex, no? So, makita natin dito, this came from the specific part of the brain which controls the motor functions of the body here. So, ito yung crosscut niya. So, ito yung makita natin. So, this is the homunculus. Ito yung nabuo kanina, no? So, ito yung mga parts ng brain natin na solely nagpo-function at napakalaki ang activity kapag ginagamit natin specific parts. We have here the swallowing, no? In the motor, the lips, the jaw, the face, no? Ayan, thumb, fingers, hand, wrist, elbow, arm, shoulder, trunk, hips. Ayan, makita natin dito, toes, genitals, the trunk, the neck, head, arm, elbow, forearm. Ayan, kaya ganito yung laki ng homunculus kanina yung itsura niya. So the eyes, nose, face, lip ulit, no? The teeth, the jaw, the tongue, the pharynx. Bakit pharynx, no? Broca's area, speaking, intra-abdominal, rather. So ito yung sensory and motor areas of the cerebral cortex. So kaya ganun yung itsura ng homunculus. Kung i-base natin sa functioning ng body, no, and activity sa brain, ganun yung maging itsura natin based on our functions. So, ayan pa, another view of the brain. So, let's skip that. Ayan. So, specialized area of the cerebrum. Several areas are involved in the special senses. So we have the gustatory area, no? We have the visual area, the auditory area, and the olfactory area. Kung titignan natin, ito yung mga major senses ng body, tama? Okay, so also, may specific parts na specialized for speech and language, no? Ano na ulit yung sa speech and language region? Can you still remember? Yung binanggit natin kanina? Broca's area, no? And language itself is the language comprehension region. Ang kanyang main part is the Wernicke's area. So, general interpretation area. Yun yung mga specialized area of the cerebrum. So, ayan. Yan yung mga part, no? Sa mga senses natin, so kung makita nyo, ito yung mga specific parts. So, have here the auditory area. Ito siya sa temporal lobe, no? Visual area. So, dito siya sa part sa likod, no? Gustatory, somatic. So, motor, ito yung nakakat kanina, na kung nakita nyo. So, frontal association, Broca's area, motor speech, no? Yan, layers of the cerebrum. So, hindi ko na siguro to masyadong i-discuss. Pero, the cerebrum itself has what is called gray matter. If you're familiar, meron pang series na gray matter. Gray matter and the white matter. So, gray matter is the outer part and the white matter is the inside of the gray matter. Okay? So, makita nyo dito, this is the gray matter and this is the white matter. But they both matter, ha? Okay, yung lobes, familiar na kayo dyan. Frontal lobe, no? Temporal lobe, occipital lobe, yung parietal lobe yung nasa tuktok. Okay? So, familiar na kayo dyan. Kung makita dito, may direction, rostral, caudal. Ayan. Mid-sagittal view of the brain part and the spinal cord. Ayan. And now, we will go to the next part which is called the limbic system. So, minsan narinig na natin to Ano bang purpose ng limbic system or ano ba ang ginagawa ng limbic system, no? Na part ng ating nervous system. So, first and foremost, limbic system is the circuit of midline structure that circuits the thalamus. So, ito yung nasa loob na part, no? Ng brain natin. Kung makikita natin externally ang cerebrum, ito yung nasa gitna sa loob, no? So, it involves in the regulation of the motivated behavior. So, tandaan nyo to, Ano yung mga regulation of motivated behavior? It includes the 4 F's of motivation, which is fleeing, feeding, fighting, and sexual behavior. Sir, sabi mo 4 F's. Fleeing, feeding, fighting, and sexual behavior. Alam niyo na kung ano yung pang-4 na F. It's according to Pinel, hindi ko to ginawa-gawa lang. The 4 F's of motivation. So, it involved also in emotion, according to Carlson. No? But it's proven. No? So, ano yung mga part ng limbic system na and their functions? First, we have here the amygdala, the hippocampus, the cingulate cortex or emotion formation and processing. We have here the fornix, no? Na hindi pa alam kung ano ang kanyang main function. We have here the septum, considered as a pleasure area or pleasure zone rather. Okay. So, ito yung mga part na yan. So, it's the limbic system. Itong part na to, limbic system yan, no? So, corpus callosum, the fornix, no? We have here the mammillary body. We have here the amygdala, the hippocampus, no? So, this is the limbic cortex or limbic system. Okay. So, the basal ganglia. So, under the basal ganglia, we have the amygdala. So, amygdala, we have here the specific parts. Pero hindi ko na siya masyadong i-discuss sa inyo, no? So, caudate nucleus, putamen. So, kapag nasira ang putamen, dito nagkakaroon ng degenerative neurological disorders. So, yung Alzheimer's, dementia, ito yan, nagkakaroon ng problem sa kanyang putamen. Globus pallidus, regulation of the involuntary movement. Hindi ko na ito masyadong include. Nakakita ko lang. Okay. yan, basal ganglia, collection of subcortical nuclei, no? Yan. So, involved in the control of voluntary movement. So, when we look upon the Parkinson's disease, it is caused by the damage of the pathway from substantia nigra of the midbrain to the striatum. So, ano ba yung mga symptoms? Or ano yung ma-observe natin kapag merong Parkinson's? Merong rigidity, tremors, and poverty of voluntary movement. Hindi niya nakokontrol. Nanginginig. Also, we have here the nucleus accumbens. Sige, hindi ko na masyado include. No? So, ito kasi nagbibigay ng rewarding effects sa addictive drugs, no, and other enforcers. Kapag na-high ka, no, nagpo-function yung nucleus accumbens mo. So, ibubus ka pa niya, para yung feeling mo ay relaxing, para yung feeling mo ay masaya or high. Ayan. You have here the thalamus, no? Okay. Technical na ibang part dyan. So now we go to the brainstem. So medyo mahaba-haba na to. So stem on which the cerebral hemisphere sit. So attached to the spinal cord, ito yung lower part na. So parts of the brainstem, dito na connected yung other parts. So we have the diencephalon, which includes thalamus, hypothalamus, and epithalamus. We have the mesencephalon, which is the midbrain. We have the metencephalon, the pons and cerebellum or cerebellum. We have the medulla oblongata under the myencephalon. Ayan, okay. Diencephalon, encephalon, metencephalon, and myencephalon. Now we go to the diencephalon. So, diencephalon sits on top of the brainstem. It is enclosed by the cerebral hemispheres, made of three parts, which is the thalamus, hypothalamus, and epithalamus. Thalamus surrounds the third ventricle. Ayan. Relay station for sensory impulses. Basta tandaan nyo, ang thalamus ay channel ng sensory impulses para mas matandaan niyo. Huwag nyo kalimutan. Ayan. Dito. Tayo dito na i-discuss mo dyan. Hypothalamus is under thalamus itself. Again, ang pronunciation sa kanya ay hypothalamus. No, yung ibang tawag dito ay hypothalamus. No, it's hypothalamus. So, under thalamus siya. Okay? So, it's important autonomic nervous system center. No? Usually, it helps regulate body temperature, controls water balance sa katawan ninyo, and regulates metabolism. So, kapag nagkakaroon ng problem yung body ninyo, no? Regarding these matters, such as yung body temperature, nilalamig kayo, no? Or yung water balance sa katawan ninyo, nagkaka-problem, yung metabolism nyo, medyo nagkakaroon kayo ng problem sa digestion, hypothalamus ang nyo, dapat nyo sisihin. Connected yan sa pag-produce ng emotions. So, a very important part yan ng limbic system. Kaya nga, minsan, sinasabi na kahit iba yung nagpo-form talaga ng emotion or hindi lang isa, hypothalamus yung minsan malaki ang impact sa pag-create ng emotions. So, the pituitary gland is attached to the hypothalamus. So, ayan. Makita natin dito, mid-sagittal view of the part of the brain. Showing the nuclei of the hypothalamus. So, here's the limbic system. Corpus callosum, fornix, ayan. Is the hypothalamic nuclei, hypothalamus, optic chiasm, pituitary gland, no? And mammillary body. Yung iba, wag nyo nang intindihin yan. Hindi nyo na kailangan identify pa yung parts. No? Epithalamus forms the roof of the third ventricle, houses the pineal body, which is a type of endocrine gland, includes the choroid plexus, which made the cerebrospinal fluid, no? And produces melatonin. So, familiar kayo sa melatonin, right? So, melatonin and the secretion of hormones from the pineal gland. Ito yung responsible sa circadian rhythm natin. Kapag may melatonin tayo, no, mas madali tayong mag-relax as mas madali tayong makatulog, no? Kapag mas dark yung paligid natin, mas magre-release yung body nyo ng melatonin, no? I-relax yung body niyo. Pero depende. Kasi, di ba, merong mga iba na hindi makatulog kapag nakapatay ang ilaw. No? Sino sa inyo yun? So, now we go to the mesencephalon or the midbrain. Mostly composed of nerve fibers and tracts, no? So, its function is for the refined motor movement and learning of new motor skill. Usually yung movement din ng fingers, i-refine din yung mga pagdodraw. Yan. It has 4 rounded protrusion, which is called corpora quadrigemina. Pero, kaya yun, hindi ko na-discuss. So, yan. Hindi ko na masyadong i-discuss. So, ito lang, tagdaan natin. So, itong under tegmentum sa mesencephalon or midbrain, itong substantia nigra, it is responsible for eye movement and motor planning. Also, reward seeking activities such as, for example, kanyari, meron kayo na-accomplish na task kapag kumain kayo ng chocolate or bumili kayo ng something na gusto nyo or naglaro kayo ng Mobile Legends or sinatisfy nyo yung sarili nyo sa pagbili sa online shopping, no? Nagpo-function yung inyong substantia nigra, no? Kasi siya yung responsible sa reward-seeking activities ninyo. Okay? Also, yung eye movement, no? We also have here the red nucleus, no? Which is important component ng sensory motor system nyo. And we also have the gait, no? The gait or the pattern of movement of the limbs. Ito yung kapag naglalakad kayo, mapapansin nyo na hindi sabay na yung kaliwat kanang kamay nyo, hindi sila sabay na paharap palikod, no? Even yung paa ninyo, kaya may timing. Kasi ang hirap naman maglakad kung sabay na humaharap yung pareho yung paa. Di ba? Tama-timing, kaliwa muna, kanan, gano'n. Try nyo, subukan nyo na pagsabayin nyo yung kamay nyo at saka paa nyo. Hindi kayo... We also have here the pons. It is the bulging center of the midbrain. So, familiar kayo dito, ito yung bilugan, no? Sa midbrain. Mostly composed of fiber tracts, includes nuclei involved in the control of breathing. So, metencephalon, we have here the cerebellum, no? Or cerebellum, miniature version of the cerebrum. So, napakalaki ng ginagawa rin or function ng cerebellum, no? It receives visual, auditory, vestibular, and somatosensory information, including information about individual muscle movements. So, napakalaki ng kanyang function sa inyong motor movements na nagko-coordinate ng movement ninyo. Kaya, yung movement ninyo ay kaliwa-kanan, kaya kayo ay may balance dahil din sa cerebellum. No? Kapag magkaroon kayo ng problems sa cerebellum, maaaring magkaroon kayo ng damage. Magkaroon kayo ng jerky movement or exaggerated yung movement ninyo. No? If you're familiar with Tourette syndrome, no? Meron silang problem sa cerebellum. Ang kanilang brain functioning ay okay, pero medyo hindi okay yung cerebellum, kaya meron silang uncontrolled movements. Ayan, reticular formation. Let's skip that. Ito, medulla oblongata. Or rather, medulla oblongata. No? So, it's pronounced as medulla oblongata. So, you can try to say it. Medulla oblongata. So, it is the lowest part of the brainstem. So, it merges into the spinal cord. So, if you're familiar, ito yung talagang nakakonect na sa spinal cord niyo. So, includes important fiber tracts too, which contains the following functions which are involuntary, such as heart rate control, blood pressure regulation, breathing, swallowing, and vomiting. These are usually one of the major functions ng medulla oblongata rather. Yung functions ng mga sumusunod. Okay. So, para mas matandaan nyo, you can screenshot this. No? Ito yung 5 division. Telencephalon, diencephalon, mesencephalon, metencephalon, at saka myelencephalon. So, telencephalon, ito na. Basahin nyo na lang. You can screenshot this. Bigyan ko kayo ng mga 2 seconds. Ayan. Pwede nyo naman balikan itong video to. No? Yung mga binanggit natin kanina, andyan na sila lahat. Yung iba dyan, nasa PowerPoint natin, hindi ko na binasa. Okay? So, ayan, yung mas marami pang parts. So, we're near end of our discussion. So, here is the 12 pairs of cranial nerves and the regions of function of they serve. Red lines denote axons, control muscle of glands, blue lines denote sensory axons. So, tuloy-tuloy yan. And I hope na maintindihan natin.